Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are streaking along in our 29th year, I interview poets and other kinds of writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished in the past, what they're planning for the future. It's a pretty wide net, so we have not only poets on, but novelists, memoirists, editors, journalists, all kinds of writers, poetry and prose. In fact, we have other brands of artists on at times. We have had on sculptors, musicians, actors. If you have an idea for a guest who might be good for the Writer's Block, writer or other kind of artist, please watch for our address at the end of the show. We would be very happy to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that this is a production of 1623 Studios, an original production for and about Cape Ann. It's a service of access television, cable access television, and you don't get it if you subscribe to Dish. So don't pay attention to those ads. You stick with cable and stick with the Writer's Block. I'm very happy to say this evening that we do have a poet who is returning after being away for 2 or 3 years. Her name is Chace. She is the reigning poet laureate of Rockport and an accomplished poet with several books out. She has just helped compile and contributed to a new book, Unlocking the Word, an anthology of found poetry. Sharon is the author of Portfolio of Painterly Poems, A Pilgrim's Path to God, 2006, An Artistic Approach to New Testament Literature, 2008, Protestant Pulse, Heart Hopes for God, and My Introduction to the New Testament, 2011. Her last book was Images of Light, Ascent to Trust in Triumph. She continues to write poetry and paints comforting images for people in hospice care. Welcome back to the Writer's Block, Sharon Chace.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold up this book, the new book that you contributed to, edited by and compiled by Jonas Zadanis.
That's as good a guess as I could do.
Zadanis. This is Unlocking the Word, an anthology of found poetry. Tell us what found poetry is, Sharon.
Found poetry are poems that you just happen to find, usually in print media or possibly in an LL Bean ad or a newspaper article, an email. The premise is that we are immersed in poetry all the time without knowing it. We are immersed in language, some of it very beautiful. And found poetry can be something that you find in a book and you take out some of the words. The rules seem to differ somewhat. Some say you can't take out any, some say you can. It's a little confusing.
So there's
It's a little
controversy
bit.
about whether you can edit or not.
Yes, and I went with the letter of the law and didn't edit mine. Mine are a little bit different from some of the other poems in the found anthology because I found mine by overhearing them. I overheard a flight attendant on a United Airlines flight talking to a family about their coming trip, and I heard a young boy talking to his parents on top of Sulphur Mountain in Banff National Park, Canada.
That's a great segue to those particular poems of yours that are
okay.
Found poems.
Found
poems that you
poems.
found. Would you read first the one you mentioned first, the United Airlines flight attendant
Yes.
poem which you overheard, and then the second, which you've titled Imperative?
Yes. Okay. United Airlines flight attendant to a young family, June 18th, 2011. Take it all in. Take pictures, the big trees, their smells. Be careful with the animals. Stay together. Don't get lost.
That's very nice. Where were they going? Where was the plane going?
Out to California.
Cali-
I don't know if they were going to Yosemite like Ernie and I were going, but it could have been because there's certainly big trees in the Mariposa Groves.
Yes, indeed. That jumped out at me because June 18th is my birthday. I thought, well, this has got to be good.
This is special.
It's got to be really special. And the second poem that you heard and contributed to the anthology.
Yes, and I call it imperative because I think it is imperative. A boy about 8 years old to his parents who are taking pictures with their digital camera from the top of Sulphur Mountain in Banff National Park, Canada. 2 lines. Never delete the rainbow. Never delete the rainbow. And I have a picture of the rainbow.
Oh, let me hold that up. This is a picture of the rainbow in which the rainbow, of course, is not deleted. Did the boy repeat it twice?
He repeated it twice.
So you don't edit
No, I
at
didn't.
all.
I didn't edit it. These were unedited. I happened to have paper and pen in hand when the airline's attendant was talking, so I wrote it right down.
Did she ask you why you were writing her directions down? Or?
No, I don't think she perhaps didn't even notice because she was really paying a lot of very quality attention to this family.
Now, this is an interesting topic, I think, because as we talked before the show and now, we're talking about editing and whether the found poem belongs to and is created by, say, the boy or the stewardess, or whether it's the person who hears or sees and therefore lifts it out and then maybe adds or subtracts, does a little intro, or rearranges the words. I'll show the audience. Well, here's a poem. Yet again, a crackdown in Cambodia. And I don't know if you can see that. That's the lines are distributed, the words are distributed, moved around. So there's extensive, at least visual editing here in this poem.
Yes.
So who's the poet?
That is a very good question, and I don't have an answer, but I do have thoughts. It seems to me it's a collaborative effort, maybe even an interactive effort, so that it's a joint collaboration, so that both are authors. I would prefer actually to give credit to the flight attendant and the young boy. But then again, I'm the one that wrote it down and got it into the anthology. So I don't know. Do you have some thoughts on that?
I think of it sort of like a band performing somebody else's piece. So the musicians get credit and the lyricist gets credit and everybody deserves credit, and it's not an individual production. It's a communal production, almost like a piece of drama. Although with drama and writing music, there is some individual behind it. So I don't have an answer either. But I have observed, just by accident, words that just jump out at you and say, oh, that's beautiful.
Yes.
But what would happen now if that boy grows up and he sees that your benediction has become world famous? Don't delete the rainbow. Or is it delete? Is that the word?
Never delete the rainbow.
Never delete the rainbow. And he says, you can't use that. I want $10 million.
I'll say,
to prove his authorship. And
good luck to you and the Red Sox.
yes. I don't know what the law would say about that.
I don't know either.
It would be problematic. This book, edited by the unpronounceable name Jonas Zdanys, Zdanys, contains a lot of wonderful stuff.
It does.
Can you pick out a couple of items that you like?
Sure. One that I like is called After the Eclipse.
And what page is that?
That is on page 57.
Okay. Please.
Oh, okay. Would you like to know how I use this before I read it? No, I'll read
Why don't we read it first?
Okay. After the eclipse, for sale, Orion SkyQuest 8-inch telescope, many extras, carrying case for extras, and owner manuals, Sky Wizard 2, Starfinder, $600. For more details, email xanadu.1@earthlink.net. That was by a man called Clarence Wolfschonheit.
And it's taken from classified ad.
Yes, from a classified ad.
Now, do you use it in connection with astronomy?
No,
Or looking upward?
I used it at the Denmark in Rockport.
Okay, the nursing
nursing home.
Nursing home.
Because I do poetry programs there. About once a month, we talk about poems, and then I do other individual visits throughout the month. But I use this poem because when your life peers down to the nursing home room and a tray in front of you, you've had to get rid of a lot of stuff.
Mm.
And the patients could relate to that, and we talked about it. And it was rather a little bit sad, but people wanted to talk about having to pare down.
This is your title for after the eclipse.
No, that's the contributor's title.
That's Clarence Wolfschonheit.
Yes,
so
that's it.
That after the eclipse appeared above the ad in the classifieds.
I suspect that he created the title to go with the ad. Just like I created the title imperative to go with Never Delete the Rainbow, Never Delete the Rainbow.
So, but the After the Eclipse is not your title, like imperative is in the other poem.
No, because the individual contributors, created their own titles.
Where was
for the
this
poems.
Classified ad?
It doesn't say. It just says on the bottom from the classified.
I'm sorry. I was thinking for a second you had found this, but this.
This is not my poem. This is somebody else's poem.
Somebody else's. You didn't choose this poem.
No, I didn't. I wasn't on the editorial selection or anything. That was the work of Jonas. I won't even try to pronounce his last name. He is a poet in residence and English professor at Sacred Heart University
In
Fairfield, Connecticut.
Connecticut, yes. Can you pick another poem out, perhaps one that you use at Denmark or simply one that you admire?
Okay, after we had the discussion about getting rid of stuff, I read the first verse of A Plant Knows on page 141.
Okay.
And the first verse is this. I can read all the first verses, but I want to tell you what one woman said after the first verse.
Okay.
A Plant Knows, contributed by Sherry Bendingfield. Her title, A Plant Knows. Much to my surprise, the genetic difference between plants and animals is not as significant as I once believed. I question the parallels between plant and human biology, plant responses to light and shadow. Light has properties shared with other types of electrical signals, such as micro and radio waves. Almost all plants bend toward light. And a woman in my poetry group at the Denmark said, "That's like the rainbow." And then we proceeded to recite the Never Delete the Rainbow poem together, and we're using that after each of the sessions as a secular benediction or an ecumenical or universal benediction.
Uh-huh.
Shall I read the rest of the poem?
Oh, yes, please.
We were confronted with the remarkable discovery one can kill a cocklebur leaf simply by touching it for seconds each day. This touch-induced growth inhibition is a general phenomenon in plant biology. Define plant memories, procedural memories, how to do things. These memories depend on ability to sense external stimulation. If plants exhibit different types of memory and have a form of consciousness, should they be considered intelligent? And the contributor got that from a article in a field guide to the senses in Scientific America 2012.
Yes. I vaguely remember that article because I subscribed to that.
Oh.
But I think he lost me when he was wondering if plants are intelligent. But I like the poem, or the idea of a found poem from science, and there are occasionally beautiful terms used in science. Would you pick out a poem, if you can think of one, that you don't think is fairly transcribed or accurately transcribed as a found poem? It's not presented very much the way it was found, in other words.
That is a very difficult question. I hadn't given that any thought. Maybe, how about on page 48? Because perhaps it's more like something that a person wrote rather than found. I do not know.
Okay.
It's called Dearly Beloved. I have sent you email lately without no feedback from you. In regards to the favorable endeavor, it's a very sensitive task, and I will like to discuss this issue with you briefly, which I believe we could both accomplish this mutual benefit within a few days before I pass to the ghost, due to my deteriorating ailment. But first, I will need swift response from you on this matter before I proceed further. Contact me via email for more exclusive details await you. No, that could have been an email that the person just had on his letterbox and reported. I don't know.
It's very much like emails because it's full of errors.
It is.
And it's intentionally mocking email, I think, perhaps a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe that doesn't really answer the question of something that maybe.
Well, I think I won't hold another poem up that's been edited and spaced out as I did originally. I don't think they show up real well. But that is an interesting question about what's being edited, mm-hmm. and whether the poem is created by the editor or the person, anonymous or otherwise, who actually spoke or wrote down the words. This is a very entertaining book by Mr. ZDANYS. And,
Professor Jonas. We could just call him Professor Jonas.
Yeah, his first name is Jonas. He's a bilingual poet and translator, and the author of 48 other books. Well, he's awfully young for 48 books, but perhaps they're thinner, some of them.
They're thinner. I like his poetry book called Salt.
Salt? Well, I'll have to see if he's ever up here from Connecticut and have him on the show.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
I want to move away from this book for a couple of minutes because we're down to 7 minutes, and ask you about some of your work as poet laureate.
Okay.
Because I have some of the material that we've been exchanging. You were good enough to send me about what you are doing. You said you're trying to keep organized, and you sent me an email about your organization, and you mentioned Denmark in this email and also just now on the show. What are you doing again at Denmark? What else are you doing as poet laureate in Rockport?
Well, the main job is to read a poem at town meeting. So I did my first poem at town meeting at the last town meeting. And then...
That's a good idea. They've never done that in Gloucester.
Oh.
Are they responsive? Are they...
People were very responsive. The people that were sitting behind me said that was a beautiful poem, and I felt very happy about that. So that's the main job. And then, but I want to serve people with poetry, and if it's if poetry is also served, so much the better. But my emphasis right now is wanting to serve people with poetry because of the honor of being poet laureate. So I am doing programs at the Denmark. We've done some of my poems. I don't want it to be all about me, but people keep telling me to go back to mine. And we've done Robert Frost. We've done haiku. And then I have a writing project that I made up a form to capture the essence of a person's life. So I interview people, and I tell their story in the first person. For example, I did that for the late Ted Tarr, who just died. So I have his story. And then I want to serve children, so...
Yes, do you go to schools?
Well, no, I haven't gone to schools. What I'm doing is collaborating with my daughter, who's an illustrator, and my son-in-law, who's good at layout, and we're doing a book called Sycamore's First Poem. Sycamore is a cat, a calico cat. And I said to my daughter, she's lightly veiled autobiography. She said, no, Mom, Sycamore is you. So it's a book about Sycamore writing her first poem. And I do have a picture of Sycamore. I brought one of the illustrations. It's going to be a coloring book, so kids can color. It's not a library book, but that's Sycamore, the calico cat, but in a black and white coloring page.
Okay, yeah, well, you're on camera there. Okay, good.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm not.
So Sycamore is a cat, and we can't really say that we found a poem from Sycamore.
No.
Might people say Sycamore is a poem.
No, Sycamore just writes her poem and helps inspire children to think that they can write poems.
So you've been fairly active as a poet laureate.
Yes. And I read a poem at the dedication of the new steeple and bell at the First Congregational Church in Rockport on Sunday.
So you are?
Just as poet laureate and as a member of the church.
I want to ask you, you sent me a couple of poems.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you about those before we run out of time here. Could you read one of these that is going to be, I think you say, in your next projected book?
Yes, I could read Opening Creativity's Box.
Okay.
This is about the poetic process. Opening Creativity's Box. Picture this, 1954. Fresh cardboard scent, a red mini chest with a flap that snaps shut over the top tray filled with pencils and eraser, the bottom drawer with a 6-inch ruler, compass, and protractor, suggesting compartments of knowledge in 5th grade. Fast forward to 1964. Math and rulers were not my tools nor treasures, but the shape inside the protractor became rhythm and design on a leather tile created for art composition 204. In time, 52 years later, this poem, first draft in pencil.
Very nice.
And I have the tile.
Very nice.
This is the tile.
That's the tile.
That's the tile.
I remember those boxes quite well. Little boxes, and drawers, and protractors, and later in college, something that you never see anymore: slide rules.
Oh yes, I mentioned those in a poem too.
You have another poem. I want to pick out a shorter poem. Would you read for us Route 16 Tractor Supply?
Oh yes. Oops. Okay, this probably should be coming up after this one. Oh, that's weather event. Route 16 Tractor Supply. John Deere tractors in signature green are an army lined up in rows, ready to go into battle on rocky New Hampshire fields. Plow and plant, pastures and dreams, savor being in granite state beauty, May Sarton paired to mountain meadow bird. It's an allusion to May Sarton's poem, as does New Hampshire.
May Sarton, for our audience who read only prose, was a very famous American poet from Connecticut. Was she?
May Sarton?
What? May Sarton.
Well, she lived in New Hampshire for a
She
while,
lived in
then
New
she
Hampshire.
moved to Maine.
Maine, okay. And she, yes, okay. I wonder if we can make a comparison to a found poem to the objective correlative that becomes a poem. You found that John Deere lineup on Route 16, and that appeared to you as a physical poem and jumped into words.
Yes.
I wonder if you could say a found poem is sometimes a physical thing, almost. It finds you, and then you put it into words.
Yes, I think poems sometimes find the authors, and I think sometimes our life finds us. Instead of people finding their life, I think sometimes life and callings find us.
That's certainly true. Jumps at you sometimes.
Yes.
We're almost out of time. I want to thank you, Sharon Chace, for being with us once again, telling us about the work of a Rockport Poet Laureate, and also sharing the book that you participated in, Unlocking the Word, an anthology of found poetry, which is available. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon, published by Lamar University. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to thank you and our audience as well, and our TV audience. If you've learned something from Sharon Chace about the importance of found poetry, and if the poet finds the poetry or the poetry finds the poet, and if we'd explain that a little bit to you, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us tonight, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.